Hey, hello. Welcome to episode number 34 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choit. What's up? So today's something that I love is electricity. I mean, where would we be without it? I wouldn't be able to do this podcast. I think next week's something that I love is going to be fire, by the way. Not as in the slang like, oh, that's fire. As in, I'm going to talk about how much I literally love fire. Anyway, for everything about this show, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. Everything you need is on there, social media, episode archive, links to listening options. That's peoplewelovepodcast.com. The Instagram handle is peoplewelovepodcast. And of course, 5-star positive reviews on iTunes are greatly appreciated as well. So, with Irish and Celtic influences coming from her dad and soul influences from her mom, classically trained pianist and singer-songwriter Myra Flynn has always had a sense of herself and the eclectic sounds that inspire her. Growing up in tranquil small-town Vermont, Myra and her music have since journeyed all over the country and the globe, touring. Myra is a true-to-herself DIY artist, but is also thankful for the fans and people who have helped her get to where she is today. And one particular inspiration has been another artist who's quite comfortable in her own weirdness. That's the one and only Erykah Badu. And toward the end of this episode, Myra sings and performs on her Rhodes piano an original song called Roses, which also has a video coming out this September 1st. Oh, and by the way, Myra is also in the middle of her first pregnancy, so congrats to her and her husband. So yeah, we get into some baby stuff as well, of course. Let's just do this. Here's Myra Flynn. So it's good to see you today, Myra Flynn.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yo, thanks for having me in your studio.
Absolutely. This is where the magic happens.
Yeah. No, I could see. Because, you're, well, congratulations. I can see that you are a pregnant woman.
You know, I'm making a human.
You're making a human.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very exciting.
Pretty scary thing as an artist, as a working artist, to think that I could ever do something conventional like that. But
boy or girl, do we know?
Don't know, don't care.
Don't know, don't care, don't want to know.
Don't want to know.
Just a healthy baby. That's all that matters.
Just have all your fingers, please.
Right.
I'll be cool with that.
What about extra fingers?
You know,
I've seen
the
that.
better to play piano with, my
right.
dear.
Right. That's true. Do you know isn't there a few piano players out there who have extra fingers? I'm sure it's a thing.
I'm sure Google has something for everybody.
Watch that later.
Yep.
Well, why don't we get into your story? Tell me about yourself and where you grew up, and you could start since birth, and I'll jump in and we'll go from there, and
okay.
We'll talk music. We'll talk Erykah Badu.
Nice.
And I'll let you get started here.
My story from birth. That's a lot to cover. I was born in Rockford, Illinois, and my dad is Irish. My mom is Black, and there was a lot of controversy about them having an interracial marriage in Rockford. They didn't want me to be there when I was born. So my dad had a friend in Vermont, and he thought it was beautiful and picked up, and we moved to Vermont.
How old were you when you moved to Vermont? So this was before you were born?
This was after. I was like a year.
A year?
Yeah, I was
pretty
a
soon.
Little baby, yeah. So they found like 94 acres of land there and built a house, and we grew up in peace, a lot of peace and tranquility. And I'm an only child, and I think that's heavily responsible for my creativity, just having to occupy myself a lot.
Yeah, was it rural Vermont? Was it farms? Like, what did it look like? What was the name of your town?
It's called Brookfield.
Brookfield.
Yeah, and the name is suggestive. It's very rural.
Yeah.
We weren't on a farm per se, but they were around us. But it was really, really rural. But it was safe, you know. And I think for them, like, that was a really foreign place to be, given where they were before, and they were just fascinated by it all. My dad like learned how to plant an awesome garden and like got some chickens and
you live on the land.
And yeah, I went for it, you know, and we learned a lot of lessons along the way. Like my folks didn't necessarily know how to like drive in the winter time there, or, you know, all the chickens kept getting eaten. And there were a lot of lessons of like big city folks coming to a small state like that. But I couldn't live full time in Vermont anymore right now, just because I think it'd be hard to kind of unsee what I've seen in the rest of the world and the ongoing to the rest of the world. It's a little like bubble like, you know?
Sure, I believe that.
Yeah, but I tour, I go back and I tour there often and love the dichotomy that I get between here and there because it is, for being one of the whitest states in the union, it's one of the most liberal and awesome and has Bernie Sanders and is, is the first state actually in the country to abolish slavery and to enact civil unions. And it's just really up my alley. So I feel a lot of Vermont pride.
Yeah, and connection to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. And what about like your school? Like how many people were in your school? Was it like a tiny height? How many people in your graduating class?
I think there were like 20 or something like that.
So it's very small.
It was pretty tiny.
And it was probably like that throughout school. All of your schools were small and everyone knew each other in town.
Yeah. I stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Why is that?
I've just always been a little wacky extrovert, I guess, artist. And I was singing at a young age. I took every opportunity to be on stage, and I've definitely calmed down now in my later years. But yeah, and I dressed like crazy. Like my mom's best friends were from London, so we would go there every summer, and I'd get all these like Spice Girl platforms and outfits and come back and rock them, and just and I was black, that alone.
It seems like you have some. Yeah, it seems like you had some like big city kind of attitude that you were bringing to Vermont, to small town Vermont.
Yeah, I mean, we just weren't from there. In Vermont, I would be called like a flatlander. It's like a term they have for people who aren't from there. So, yeah, we had a lot of culture that I think we brought to living there, which was cool.
And you said you never really got bored. It's just what you knew, that this is the life you knew. You never got like bored. You just, because you were always singing and entertaining yourself and you traveling a little bit with your family, so you didn't really feel bored or closed off or isolated living there.
I think, well, bored is like a concept I have trouble understanding just
Right.
in general. Like, I don't understand how people get bored. It's just like, just go do something. So I would just always make things happen. And sometimes those were adventures that were dangerous. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I don't. What do you mean?
like,
I could guess.
just being really young and like getting on a bus and going to Boston and being like, I'm going to go do that because, because I need to go see Boston. I need to see what that's like. Or just putting myself in like emotionally dangerous situations, like going up on stage at like open mic nights that were for all like 25 to 30-year-olds when I was just 15, and like getting a fake ID just so I could like go in and sing for an hour, or going to Montreal for the weekend where everybody could like go into clubs at age 16 so I could experience new dance moves. And I just always kind of lived on that edge, always hung out with older people, always was just curious and wanted to know more. And when I was 16, I actually graduated from high school. I graduated early.
Whoa.
And went to college at 16. It was a baby there. And that was, again, like another dangerous, adventurous, emotionally unsafe thing to do. But it was really cool. I actually got signed to my first record label while there. I got signed to Wyclef Jean's label for a little while.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that was really cool and really traumatizing.
Traumatizing
at
why?
the same time. I mean, there's not enough time on this podcast.
I guess we could do a whole podcast. Sounds like we could just do a whole episode around that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm both heartbroken and thankful for the old regime of the music industry changing right now. Because the idea that like these are the 5 steps you need to do in order to be famous, and if you don't do them, it won't happen, is a blatant lie, and one that a lot of, I think, young women get caught up in. And so, and plus it was hard to balance college and it was just really weird.
Yeah.
But when I was in school, I was in college at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So the big city to go travel to from there was Philadelphia. And the neo-soul movement had just started in Philadelphia. And I'm very thankful that I was there for that time because I was able to take a lot of the musical lessons from there with me and really advance as a musician from there.
So it doesn't sound like living in small town Vermont really held you back, because you were exploring outside of that town, and you were exploring creatively and challenging yourself creatively and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and just exploring.
Yes.
That's cool. So you went to college near Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And you started to go visit Philadelphia to see shows? Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
like at the time there was like spoken word cafes everywhere, and the open mics or open jams always had like famous people just walking through. Um, yeah, it was a really conscious time. It was a time of change. It was a time of empowerment, and that was all coming out in art. And it's something that makes me look at these times and be like, man, where's the art right now? You know,
Yeah.
like really wish that it was showing it more. I think it's just starting to, which is really exciting. I think we're all in shock collectively. So, but at that time, there was a lot of people finding their voice, I feel.
Right.
And we were using things like spoken word and music to do that. And I had a lot to say, turns out. So I fit right in there. And for the first time, I think artistically felt like at home. Especially growing up with a dad who had all these Irish influences in music. We listened to a lot of Celtic music. He started a Celtic festival. Like we were deep in it with bluegrass and Celtic. And then my mom, who had all the soul influences. I mean, it was constantly Luther Vandross playing in the house, Whitney Houston, Anita Baker. And so I ended up kind of this. Oh, and I was classically trained at piano since age 4. So
Whoa.
I ended up with this really strange like amalgamation of sounds, of cultural sounds and influences going on inside of me. And I think what I took from like my dad's side of music was the heavy influence of lyrical importance from like Joni Mitchell and Lorena McKennitt and, you know, Leonard Cohen and these people who were just lyrically focused and
Sure.
storytellers.
Poets.
James Taylor, poets, Bob Dylan. Yeah. And then my mom's side, this like soulful, like, you know, nothing is better in my opinion than the Black voice,
Sure.
you know, singing soulfully. And I have that voice. So to combine the two with piano that wasn't jazz teachings, that was all classical, just gave me this very eclectic sound. And I never got a ton of feedback that was really supportive of it from the music industry. Because how do you sell something that weird, you know?
No, yeah. Well, how do you? How did you say? You say I'm a Celtic soul singer who plays classical piano.
Yeah.
No. How did you kind of present yourself? I guess initially to the industry. I'm holding up quotes.
Well, I mean, that's assuming that I had any power whatsoever. I mean, I didn't present myself. They found me, and they would not accept any of my original music and found songwriters and tried to turn me into Beyonce, basically, like they do with every sexy light-skinned Black woman in America.
Wow.
And so that's one of the reasons I can speak to that it was kind of traumatizing, because for the first time, I'd been doing this cool, weird thing in rural Vermont where nobody cared, and I was free to just be the weirdo and the music nerd that I was. And then I got into the industry, and I was being told to be somebody that I wasn't.
That's
and
terrible.
It was hard too. It was a hard job.
That's upsetting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your mom had a lot of influence on you, and your dad had a lot of influence on you musically. What about, what music did you discover maybe on your own that you haven't even mentioned? What were you listening to at the time?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you said you were a lot of the neo soul and the spoken word stuff in Philadelphia, but what about even before then, like growing up in Vermont? Like what kind of music were you? Yeah, what were you listening to that maybe your parents weren't?
Yeah.
Weren't into?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, well, we didn't have a lot of outlets to new music in rural Vermont.
Yeah.
Right? And everything that came out was like 10 years later in Vermont, you know, it had already been out for a while everywhere else. So again, another reason for being adventurous was to try to scope out new music. I really loved listening to Tracy Chapman.
Yeah.
I really loved listening to, I loved ladies with like big low voices like Annie Lennox, Sade. And then when I got a little cooler, it was like TLC, Michael Jackson. I got
forever.
a little bit cooler instead of just always going for like the emo stuff. And then I loved like Lilith Fair and Sarah McLachlan and, you know, just
eclectic, fairly eclectic. I got you.
Yeah. Eventually that spawned into Alicia Keys, and, you know, I kind of thought for a while she stole my career because she played piano and she was biracial.
the only one.
I know, but she and I are very different artists, and I don't think that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So it sounds like your parents were kind of like maybe free spirits unto themselves, like just to pick up and move to this small town in Vermont, and they had a lot of musical influence on you, and it seemed like they trusted you a lot. I don't know. I could be mistaken, but it seems like you were traveling. You're on your own. You're hanging out with adults. So it seemed like there was kind of like trust, and they treated you kind of like with like I don't know. You tell me, like an adult almost when you were younger or something like that. Did you get into trouble a lot when you were a kid?
Well, I think it's complicated because, like, I think by proxy, as an only child, you end up not so much being a child. You end up being third party to the marriage,
Right.
In some ways. And they're your friends, and they're the people that you do things with, are your folks, and they're friends. You don't have like some sibling. Like, I feel like some people have two kids because they're like, we want them to play with each other and go distract each other so we can do our adult things separately. But my parents brought me to everything. But I think, of course, when things were more like scary or daring or risky, they would have preferred that I'd acted like a child and been a little more innocent about them. But I'd kind of seen too much.
Right.
So
you grew up kind of
I grew up fast,
in
and I think they might still be in denial of that. My parents, I love you, but I did grow up really, really fast, and I'm really thankful for it. Especially artistically, like I could hang with the big dogs at an early age and know who I was, and I know who I am. And
that's awesome. That's still something a lot of people are trying to discover.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Including some people in this room to some degree, for sure.
You're doing a great job.
I'm working on it. So when did you discover Erykah Badu's music? Before college, like earlier on, or was it like later on, or?
It was in college. It was directly in college.
Okay, so we'll pick up where we left off, college and then beyond.
Yeah. So college, so again, like exploring the Philadelphia music scene, and even like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, even though it was kind of small and weird, had that going on. And even on campus, I mean, being biracial is something that there tends to be a lot of racial tension around culturally because, at the time, the college was super, super expensive semi-Ivy and had this like twisted dichotomy of really, 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 really stupid, like I just like crashed 6 BMWs and my parents keep buying me new ones, white kids.
Yeah.
And then incredibly brilliant inner city Black kids that were brought there as part of like a funding program, I think called Posse, I think it was called. And then like, as most places struggle with, like nary the two should meet because nobody could really facilitate like the differences in culture. And I, was pretty wide-eyed and innocent and dumb coming from Vermont and was just like trying to hang with everybody or whatever, and had to like learn some hard lessons about where others thought I did belong or didn't. So I had a lot of trouble gaining personal respect, just socially. It wasn't in my nature to just like tell people who I was. I just kind of sat back and felt excluded for a while. But as soon as that neo soul movement hit our college campus and there was space for me to go and perform performance poetry, there was space for me to go and sing, I killed it and immediately got that respect because I had a platform to really share my voice. And so did everyone. And, we were all just young and mean. That's how everybody is at that age. But I think like, the art helped bridge the gap. And I can only think of the world that way, art bridges the gap. So anyway, and extending past the campus and going to explore, Erykah Badu came up a lot. She was a huge influence in somebody who was just unapologetically both completely classy and completely hood.
It's hard to strike that balance.
It is completely gorgeous and just like this like stunning alien with these like beautiful praying mantis like head wraps and this whole look, and also completely ratchet with like gold teeth and a grill, and treated men the way men treat women, and treated the music industry like it was working for her and her strange sounds, and was conscious in her lyrics, incredibly conscious, and was I just think one of the more thoughtful, I would say, especially lyrically, soul performers I'd ever seen, and one of the more soulful lyrical or lyricists that I'd
Sure.
ever seen. And on top of that, had such comfort in her weirdness. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to a lot of her, but she's just very strange. She'll just make like these nasal sounds out of her mouth and not and add them on the track and then stack it up and layer it and like put an echo on it. And that's the new nasal sound that's like starting the thing. It's just, she messes with analog, she messes with digital. She did a whole album on GarageBand, I believe. Like she
takes risks. It sounds like she
Yeah.
takes risks and tries new things, and that's
She
where
does.
creativity lives. And it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I guess you could be successful in doing that. You could fail in that, but without the risk, like, what's the point if you're just playing it safe all the time? I guess.
Exactly. And she represented a freedom that I'm still trying to attain because I'm a very structured songwriter, which I'm proud of because I do think it takes a lot to organize emotions into a song. But I also loved her freedom to just try new things. And I think some musicians out there might think that you need like a lot of money spent somehow, either in studio time or whatever it may be, in order to explore your own weirdness. But she just grabbed GarageBand and tried it out herself and got on stage, and she talks shit to the audience. Like, she's just great. She's just really wonderful.
She seems like she's just someone who's true to herself.
100%. I mean, in my opinion,
Yeah.
I don't know. You know,
She
we're
comes
not
across,
friends.
I mean,
But yeah.
because you've never met her, I'm guessing.
I have not ever met her. I have a lot of people in my life that are in her life, and I am way too nervous to ever ask them.
Well, maybe they'll hear this, and you could do the whole like passive, little passive
Passive
aggressive.
aggressive.
Just put it out there into the universe, really. You know,
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's also so many people who are expressing what I'm expressing to
Right.
her. But for a young girl who is really trying to find her way with a unique sound, Erykah Badu lifted my spirits big time.
And you've seen her perform
So many times.
so many times. Where in Philly or all over the place?
Philly, Montreal. My husband took me to see her on Valentine's Day here at the Ace Hotel. Yeah, we check her. She's around.
Yeah. How many
You
times
know?
have you seen her? Would you say?
Okay, maybe not a ton, but I'd say probably 5.
Yeah, that's
I'd
a
say
bunch.
5. Yeah.
And you never had any correspondence with her? Like, were able to say hello to her after a show? Anything
I just
like that?
and I could. That's the thing.
Yeah, you
but
don't-
I just fangirl. And I think
That's okay sometimes.
it's
I
okay.
think.
And I think as a musician, you get so like cerebral about music. When you go see music, sometimes you're just like, I wonder why those choices were made with that guitar part. Or like, you just get so cerebral.
Right.
She's the only music still that I can just get lost in. So I almost appreciate not having an agenda at all.
Yeah.
I just love to go
I
and
think maybe that's
experience
what you
it.
tell her when you see her. That I get lost in your music. That's
Yeah.
funny because you don't want to. It sounds like you just don't want to force it, like
Yeah.
because you're like partly nervous that you would fangirl, but you also want I'm sure her to see you as a colleague in some regard.
Right.
Would that would mean everything to you. I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
For her
I
to
mean,
respect what you
yeah.
do and appreciate it.
Yeah, I do think that the cool thing is that the new wave of, and I hate this title, neo soul.
Yeah.
This new wave of, I'd say, like conscious soul music, or lyrically based soul music. I'm a part of, and I'm a part of being one of the founding mothers of that in my own right. And so, yeah, I would not ever want to, I guess, like, how some people in
Impose.
LA just have this agenda with
Yeah.
like meeting famous people.
Right.
I respect her so much that like I wouldn't do that with her.
Right.
Like other people maybe, but like with her, I'm just there I'm a fan.
It can't be a favor. It can't be her. You don't want to ask people to go out of their way for just to meet her, just for a meet and greet. That's not what this is about. You'd rather you should take your time, keep working on your thing, and when the time comes, I think your paths will cross and
Find my way to her.
Right, that's right. The universe will
Yeah.
will bring you there.
Yeah. She's
Did you go to school to college to study music in some capacity?
Yeah, I was actually a double major of classical piano and journalism.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you knew. Did you know? Like, what did you think? Did you think about what were you going to do after college? While you were in college, you're like, I'm going to be a journalist that plays piano at night. No, did you kind of know what you want to do, or not even exactly sure at that point?
Not really. My love for journalism was really surprising to me. So when I got out of college and needed a job, I was like so psyched that I could go be a journalist because being a musician was going to be such slow. I had already been doing that. It's going to be such slow work. So I did both simultaneously for a while. Turns out the newspaper industry went through similar changes as the music industry around the same time. So it was like all those years of college to sign up for these two failing industries.
Yeah, no more CDs and no more printed newspapers.
Yeah, I know. The internet just kind of like demolished both of those. And so I have spent probably, I'd say, the last 10 years of my life trying and succeeding at learning what it is to be a DIY musician and what it is to support yourself label free, and now teach other musicians how to do the same, and have a huge passion for self-empowerment and just like wanting people to recognize that, well, first of all, fame shouldn't be first, but that also like you can do this on your own. Your expectations need to be realistic, like from the 60s, from like people who would go and tour and gather fans one by one and treat your fans well and love them. They're not stupid. Don't take advantage of them. Don't constantly try to sell them shit. Like, be a human to human, like remove that wall between artist and fan, and be somebody in this world right now, especially right now, that has something to say that touches people, and like, you'll be fine. Just go to work.
Now, I was going to ask you, like, what some of the things that are involved with like what you're describing as far as, what did you say, being major label free? I forget what the term is.
Just being independent.
Being independent, yeah. But you kind of just summed it up pretty good, like breaking down that wall between creator and audience. And that's something that like I've been struggling with myself with this podcast, and it's it comes up in conversations with my guests over and over, but I'm struggling to act on it, which is like just putting myself more into the podcast, which is what people want. I think is like, I should shoot little videos and, hey, I just, record this interview. Hey, I just recorded this intro. Check out the next episode. Like just a short video of myself, but it's hard to like be vulnerable like that.
I know.
Baby steps.
Yeah. And I think also just to I think touch on what you're saying, like part of feeling vulnerable is part of feeling like you're not going to be acting like yourself when you do it. And so the trick is act like yourself. Like, I have Instagram videos of me being like, I'm feeling super pregnant today. Everything's a mess.
People love that.
Like, yeah, I mean, you can't fake authenticity. And when I'm on stage, I get more comments sometimes about my banter than I do about my music, because I sit there with the audience and I'm like, woo, this whiskey just hit me real hard, or like whatever. And your true authentic self is really what anybody wants.
Yeah,
anymore.
that's the human side. That's the universal appeal. That's what people, not just but people relate to those little moments for sure. Yeah,
there's entire Instagram accounts famous for people just like sitting there eating.
Yeah, can I become part of that somehow? 'Cause it's part of this fad. How do I get on board that train?
On the eating on Instagram?
Yeah,
train?
on the eating, becoming famous on Instagram, Insta famous just from eating food. That seems like that's I want to transition into that career path.
It's a sociological experiment. It's like we want to just see people be themselves so badly.
What other, like, we don't have to go into your whole how this all works, but like, what else about being like independent, like, do you advise other people, like, what else is part of your approach is like being successful as an artist with being independent? What else jumps out at you?
Well, I can say some things that I think are holding back some of the other people that I know, that ego's a big deal. And if you think that the world or the creative world or the industry owes you any sort of success at all, or that people should like you because you think you're special, like, you're 100% wrong.
Yeah.
I have always been so surprised and thankful. I write a song by myself and it feels like it has to come out of me, so it might as well be a twitch. I might as well have emotional Tourette's and call it songwriting, right? And then play it for one person and they like it and like it touched them. It's just like mind-blowing to me. I feel like an alien all the time. I'm like, this is so cool. But somewhere along the way, like, so many people have lost that perspective. And it's just this like, I'm really good. I know how to do this thing. and the world owes me this because of it. And that's, I think it's hard for me to even like work with people like that or spend too much like personal inner circle time with people like that, because it's just so obvious that they're in their own way.
Right.
So I think having the expectation of, you know, how creative people are like, well, at least I don't have to work at a day job, you know, like you do have to work at a day job. You have to get up and you have to go to work. Your work looks different, but you still have to put in those 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever hour days. And on the days that you're not touring and you don't have any gratification, you don't have an audience cheering for you, you don't have people patting you on the back, you still have to get up and go to work. And like,
you're talking about work, like music type work,
yeah,
like treating it as if it's
some
a
new
blue
songs,
collar job.
Get
like,
better. Yeah, exactly.
Taking the time at it.
Exactly. One of the best compliments that an article ever gave me, some press a while back, was like Myra Flynn attacks her music career like a farmer getting up every morning, like working on his farm or something. And I loved that. It's like farm your work slowly.
And what inspired that was just from the interview. They were just talking to you, and that's kind of what they concluded.
Well, they had been watching me for a while.
Oh, I see.
And
your whole,
watching me like haul a keyboard
process,
around or like play like 10 nights in a row, 2 shows a day, and get up on stage with like, you know, throat coat and whatever and a hoarse voice and still do the show, or like play through a night where all the power went out, or, you know, drive when everybody else was taking a plane because it was cheaper, and sleep on somebody's floor because it was cheaper. And I needed to, you know, I was happy to be broke for like 5 years before I made a dime. It's just how it's always been done for every successful musician. And then anybody else that's had it any other way has had a very privileged entryway into it. And I think that is not something we should expect for ourselves, you know, like you got to work at it.
Yeah. For the most part, I feel like anyone who enters it from like that privileged perspective or takes success for granted, they either not going to be, I'm guessing, the creative artist that other people become, or they're just not going to last, I guess is another thing.
Well, you can hit with one hit song, and that is awesome. But in 2019, what does that really translate to? Music is free. What it translates to is, if you want to make any money, is more touring, higher paid tours. So at the end of the day, you got to go to work anyway. You know, you have to do the grind anyway. Music is in a tough spot, but I think tangibles is really where it's at. And then if you are lucky enough to have one person buy a CD or one person come and buy a ticket to your show, let alone hundreds, let alone thousands, don't take advantage of those people. They will go away quickly, you know, and expecting that they're always going to be there. And that's insane. Sometimes I'll write my fans before a tour, certain ones that follow me on Instagram, where I follow back, and I'll be like, how are your kids doing? I can't wait to see you at some of these shows. Have you picked out the ones that are your favorite? Of course, I'll sing you happy birthday. Of course, I'll do whatever. And I know some musicians out here that would be like way too good for that, but are like working 3 waitressing jobs, you know, in order to go make their next record. So I don't know. I get to pay for my art with my art, and I love that. And I just try to pay close, thoughtful intention and attention to everything that I'm giving and receiving.
This is all, you know, pretty inspiring and just interesting for me to hear, and just to hear the way you treat your fans and your listeners and people like that is just it's cool.
Thanks.
It's cool to hear.
I think sometimes I've been a little too generous of my openness, because, you know, sometimes you can let the bad in with the good when you're like that, and that's important to pay attention to as well. But I'd still rather be on the open side of things.
You seem like I feel like I'm almost can be the same way. It's almost like I give people the benefit of the doubt until they prove me otherwise. Yeah. Whereas some people, I think, do the reverse. They see the worst in everyone, and then they have to earn like the positive respect or whatever. Yeah,
the skepticism and just the doubt, and all of that is just insecurity anyway, right? About like what you are worried about people are going to take from you or do to you, or and I think most people, instead of working on less risky behavior, should work on their resilience, because if you work on your resilience, then you can take any risk in the world and later fix yourself.
Yeah. How do you work on resilience? Isn't it just failing and just learning to deal with failure or setbacks and in a positive way, just whether it's from getting advice or reading books or watching videos about this stuff or just I guess it's just from experience.
It's different, and it's different for everyone,
Right.
but it's a holistic practice in some way. I mean, like for me, resilience always looked like whenever I hit the worst of the worst in my life and the hardest point, and then I got better from it just naturally over time without trying. I realized, oh, okay, we get better.
Right.
So like everything's gonna be okay, you know?
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's probably some truth in that, I think.
Yeah, what doesn't
sure.
kill you hasn't killed you. So just quit whining and go try new things.
Yeah, especially when you look back and you had like a major crisis or a trauma or a failure or whatever the case may be, and you think like, oh, how did I get past that? How did I get through that?
Yeah.
And you don't even know, but you did.
Yeah.
So you feel like, oh, maybe I'm stronger than I thought.
Yeah, and there's a difference, right, between like feeling bad and feeling trauma. And we can't always associate the two, you know, just the same with like being sad or being depressed. You know, depression and trauma are also bodily experiences and things that are stored deeply that need, you know, far more than what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But I do think like if you have some hard things happen and you have some sadness, I mean, I've made a lot of music out of my sadness. And
You got to turn it into something productive
work on
and
your
positive.
resilience. Work on your resilience.
Work on your resilience.
Yeah.
Cool. So what happened after like college and where did we go from here? Because you were living in the Philadelphia area and where did we go from there?
I stayed with the label for 3 years, and then they were in New York, and then eventually made my way to New York City.
So you were living in New York after school.
Yeah. I went back to Vermont, I think, for a year or something to just like recoup and play a little bit. And I was a journalist for a newspaper there.
That's right. You were doing journalism.
Yeah,
music.
and loved it and enjoyed it. But then eventually moved to Brooklyn and was in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, before it was like the mayhem it is now. So it was really cool. And I still had like an old school loft and lived with all musicians in this giant loft.
That sounds like the life.
It was great. I think here is the trajectory, in my personal opinion, is if you grow up in a space or a place that has ultimate confidence and holds you so well that you end up coming with ultimate confidence from that space, like Vermont did for me, because I had so much support, because it was so small. Take it to New York City and get your ass kicked, because that city doesn't care about your confidence. Everybody who's there is excellent. I mean, excellent at their jobs. And I met the most amazing musicians who put everything I thought I was good at to shame. And I had to level up, right? I had to get better. Nobody came to my shows until they did, you know, until I hustled and put up posters in the rain and like went around to every place and begged people or whatever until they did. And then once they did, they kept coming. And eventually I broke through New York City in a way that I left that city being like, I'm good at this. This is something I'm good at. I had proof of it. And then you go to Los Angeles when you have something to sell. And I think this is a tough city, LA, to do the New York part that I did here, to like break yourself wide open, because it is there's no Wall Street in LA, right? Wall Street is art. Wall Street is Hollywood. And so art's treated very differently here. It's such an industry. It's a machine.
Right.
And I'm thankful for it, because you need art to continue to make money. That's the only way that we have any value. I mean, our government certainly doesn't recognize it like they do in other countries where there's government funded art. So it's super important that we have an industry. But if I had gone from Vermont to LA, for instance, like this wide-eyed, confident, innocent person thinking I was the shit, to Los Angeles thinking I was going to get on TV the next day, there's like some major steps missing in that whole thing. Like, what about the 1x1 fan I acquired? What about, you know, the people in New York who said, you're not good, this person's good. And then I went and stalked that person down until I learned to be as good as they were. So you're missing some steps. So I just get worried sometimes here about people like getting dropped off in buses from like Kansas or whatever, like seeking fame
Right.
first. You got to go to your like college of life, whatever that is.
Sure. What did you learn from the people back in New York before you came to LA that like, besides obviously like the hustling and the fans one by one and the promoting your shows and the building relationships and just showing people that you're serious? What was it about like the creative part that you needed to like up your game? Was it just like your singing ability? Was it your range? Was it your songwriting? Was it your stage presence? Was it just kind of all the above of these just sort of creative areas of your career?
Totally. It was like, hey, did you know that you wrote your last 4 songs in the key of D? And I'd be like, no. Or like, you have permission to throw in a blue weird note here. It doesn't have to be this like linear A to B thing with your song. It can get like have this really weird section that's in the middle. And I'm like, what? Because I didn't study jazz. I didn't know anything outside of like what was correct.
Right.
And I was very good at what was correct. But what is also correct in music is to not be correct.
Yeah.
And like,
that's where the originality lives.
Yeah. And I think permission from fellow musicians who had discovered that to take what I knew, which they saw in me was good, and pair it with what they were doing and learn from that. Was just astounding and amazing. Like learning how to be authentic with an audience. That was definitely something I learned more of there, because you do no good in a city where there's 5 people in the audience and you're shaking and you say nothing to them and you just like look down and sing the whole time. And eventually you got to look up and you have to invite them. You have to meet them. And
so many things it seemed like you were learning, and it sounded like it was coming from people who had a lot of credibility, at least in your eyes, for sure. So
well, there's a lot more like Berkeley kids like dumped into Brooklyn than there are in Vermont. So it was, all of a sudden you're playing, people are like, you want a band? We'll give you a band. And then you have like this band that's just, you gotta rise to the occasion and be as good as they are. And I learned a lot and be open to that. That's the other problem, right? Like ego. Like a lot of people thinking like, I'm really good, I know what I'm doing. So I'm not open. Yeah. I mean, I worked with a group of men, wonderful, beautiful men in New York who were in my band, who we would sit in a room and literally criticize each other, either sarcastically or with wit or with some truth, the entire time until we workshopped through a song. It was the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I miss the East Coast.
Yeah, you enjoy the process.
Yeah.
I miss it too sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So what happened when you came to LA? Where do we go from there?
Well, I got signed to a management team out here in LA, and went through, I'd say, another reincarnation of the whole like let's see if we can make you a pop star kind of thing. But at this point I have a deep appreciation for pop music.
Yeah. That's fine.
A deep appreciation for pop music. And so I kind of accepted the challenge and loved it and started writing like more pop oriented music. And you can hear that on my last record, and worked with Jared Lee Goslin, who's won Grammys, and he produced it, and Tony Gantos, who also produced it. Like just these phenomenal producers. It just leveled up the sheen on everything that I did was much glossier here in LA.
Yeah, but not in necessarily in a way that was taking you away from someone who you were. They were still staying true to you, but expanding maybe your appeal or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, totally. I was more open to being sold and being original, and thankful that I could write my own stuff. And I feel like LA is nice because the East Coast has so much value in the grind, more so than the results of the grind. And the West Coast, you come with your like tired baggage, and people here are like, oh, you can hand that to me. Like, I'll take that. Let's see what we can do with it. And you're like, what? I've been looking for you forever. So, needless to say, that was a really cool part about being here. The hard part about being here is the people. I miss the East Coast people and the authenticity, and
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say the hard thing about being here is the people, referring to the other people who are not your close friends. You're not your close music friends or your management or the people who are the rest of LA.
Yeah, I just think in general there's a sometimes a lack of a thoughtfulness that can go on.
Sure.
And that's based on a lot of things that have nothing to do with me or my criticism of it, though. It's based on people trying to make a real, actual, not fake, not even tiny, not in your garage, living at art. And so, of course, you come with your card first. Of course, you come with your ego first. Of course, you come dressed to kill. Of course, you might not tell the truth all the time. It's a hard job to try to be a professional adult with a family and a home and a mortgage or whatever as an artist and be in the industry. And people here are doing that for real. So it comes with those things. But when you first get here and you're from the East Coast, you're like, what is it's crap. But it just takes a little while to find your people.
Yeah,
So,
it sounds like that's something you always seem to be able to do.
yeah.
Whether it's in Vermont, whether it's in Philly, whether it's in New York,
Yeah.
whether it's in LA, it seems like you gravitate towards the right people, the most authentic people, and vice versa.
I think so. I think at this point in my life, it's been like a high priority is to find authentic connections, and also to find connections that aren't draining or taking, we aren't draining or taking from one another.
Right.
And I think that's nice.
Yeah, I feel like as I get older and older, is that, I have a lower tolerance for bullshit.
Yeah.
And just want to use my time wisely and be around people who appreciate me and who I appreciate, because
Yeah.
otherwise, what the hell are we doing with our time? It's a finite resource.
I know. Well, what the hell you're doing with your time when you haven't been doing that has been learning all the lessons to get you here so that
Right.
you can do that with your time now, or you know who to say no to or how to say it.
So you've been in LA for how long, you say?
It's been almost 6 years
Almost 6
coming
years.
up. Yeah. Yep.
And you've been doing a lot of touring as well. Why
I
don't
do
you
so
tell me about
much touring.
some of the touring and some of the other
Yeah.
where the music has got, where your music life has progressed in the last few years or whatever.
Yeah. I tour a lot on the East Coast. I do like Montreal all the way down to Philly, usually, and everywhere in between. And it's great. It's a great place to tour. That's different than the rest of the country because there's so many small little states, and so there's so many different audiences within each of those states. If you think about California, not the same, right? Like you can play in LA or
Yeah.
LA or San Diego. Or maybe San Francisco, which I'll do as well. Like I've got some shows coming up here, but for the most part, East Coast touring, if you want to actually like work, is a great place to go and do it. I've done some in the Midwest. I've done some overseas. I've toured Australia a bunch.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've toured. I've been England and France, and
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite part of the whole music life? Is the touring in front of and playing in front of all these different people all over the globe? Is it the writing? Is it the recording process?
Yeah.
What is the most rewarding and fun part, or is it all of it? It's the whole life.
Least favorite
Sure.
recording process, because authenticity means so much to me.
Yeah.
I find it hard to repeat the same sentence over and over again.
Right.
I've had some producers that have made me really enjoy that process, though, and kudos to them because I'm kind of stubbornly just more of an in the moment artist, which I think is why I gravitate more towards touring. I do love touring. I love touring now a lot more because I'm more successful, and so I can be a bit more choosy about when and how and where. And I
Yeah.
don't sleep on floors anymore.
That's great.
And I don't drive when I don't have to. And, I just toured 30 shows back to back, pregnant.
That's amazing.
Went from first trimester into second. And I could not have done that, say, 5 years ago. I would have had, things wouldn't have been as set up as they are now to have a safe experience. Because sometimes that can be really unsafe, like really unsafe to your mental health as well. Like, I never thought I'd like find actual love because I was always gone.
Yeah.
Every time there was ever like a problem in my relationship, I'd be like, well, I got to go over here now, go tour in Brazil or like
Yeah.
whatever.
You would just leave.
I would just leave.
And it wouldn't even be like, it would just be like it's almost organically in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, well, now I'm going to do this now.
Yeah, exactly. And you can kind of love that way, love from a distance and be distant and not be, held accountable or not hold yourself accountable. And like, touring brings that on. You can do the same thing, not just with love, but like with eating, or like with like how you treat your friends or your parents, and you can neglect
important things.
Exactly. And you always have a good excuse. This is how I make my living. So you guys can't complain about it.
Right.
And they can, and they should. And, I've had better things brought to me the more I've said no. I've had the yeses be a lot more powerful. So I think that now I felt safe touring. My husband and I have kind of a ritual. When he joins me, he'll come for like 2 weeks, and like I just went with him to Utah for bar rescue, and then I'll go with him. And,
he works on the show, of course.
Yeah. And he has his own consultancy, so he travels for that as well. So we're all, this is our life. We tour, we travel, and I highly recommend anybody out there who's been dealing with this kind of thing in their life is like, or just anything, just find a partner that you can be exactly yourself with. Because my touring doesn't scare Phil at all.
Yeah.
And his doesn't scare me. And I know a lot of the girls he was with in the past were like not okay with him being gone, kind of stifled his business because he would feel guilty.
Sure.
And I would always feel awful too with partners and just be like, what's the point? So to find somebody that's willing to put in the extra money and effort, because it takes more money to make it work. You got to find each other on the road.
Yeah.
Then that's one of the coolest things that's happened.
Great. That sounds cool. Yeah. Did you want to play something? Why don't we play something here?
That sounds like a plan. All right. This is a song I wrote called Roses. And what's fun about playing this is my music video for this. I hate music videos, by the way. And so I come out with them really infrequently. But this one is dropping September 1st. And I paired with a producer in Argentina who had a drone and did half the video in Argentina and half of it in LA. So that's coming out September 1st. And yeah, the song is about, what is it about? I'd say it's the nicest song about a cheater that you've ever heard. I bet you think that I'm mad 'cause you got someone else to hold you at night. And I'm not saying that I'm glad, but I'm not looking for a fight. Think you deserve all the love that you can handle in your life. I bet she tastes like roses. I know I taste like wine. I bet she loved you quickly. Well, I got nothing but time. But she calls you baby in a voice that sounds nothing like mine. Bet she tastes like roses all the time. I'll stay steady as a mountain. I'll try to watch it all unfold and chalk it up to a lesson in patience and control. Think you deserve all the love your eager heart could have unrolled. I bet she tastes like roses. I know I taste like wine. I bet she loved you quickly. Well, I got nothing but time. But she calls you baby in a voice that sounds nothing at all like mine. But she tastes like roses all the time. What you think I didn't have a clue that someone else was loving you? I got no regrets. Got no regrets with my love, 'cause I'm not here to start a war. Plus I'm sure she'll love you but she tastes like roses. Ooh, but she tastes like fucking roses. Ooh, now that she calls you baby in a voice that sounds nothing like mine, but she tastes like roses. But she tastes like roses. No, no, but she tastes like roses. Oh, yes. All the time.
Oh, hell yeah. Nice.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I got a hell yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful playing, beautiful singing. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks
Very
so
soulful.
much.
I feel relaxed.
You
I
feel good?
For sure. It's
Well,
like
cool. That's
very cool sound coming out of that for sure.
Yeah,
the
Rhodes. Yeah, this is a 73 vintage Rhodes, and the only reason I drove cross country when I moved here is because I didn't trust anybody to move it except for me, because it's so precious to
Packing
me.
in bubble wrap.
Yeah, and it's just like it folds into a suitcase. It's called a suitcase Rhodes, and it's like as heavy as a coffin with a body in it. It's
that
insane.
Thing folds up into a suitcase?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like, it's got a lid, and it just does this whole compacted thing. So it's kind of like a giant rectangle, a very heavy one. But yeah.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you playing. I appreciate you singing.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your time. Why don't you tell people how they can find you on social media, any shows, anything you're working on upcoming? I know you're working on a baby. I see that.
I'm working on it.
Heard.
Yes. Well, yes. Well, speaking of, I just started a new Instagram account called Baby Mama Myra because I didn't want to combine my Insta with music and kid stuff.
Personal life.
Yeah.
Thing,
or just like the mom stuff is like it's a huge industry, and so I don't know that people always want to be hit over the head with that. So if you want to see my personal stuff about like my belly and my life and my lack of morning sickness, which I'm super proud of, you can follow me there. But for the most part, follow me at Myra Flynn. It's MyraFlynn. Very black and very Irish name combined.
Nice.
On Instagram, that's where I do most of my dirty work. I just copy and paste it there. My website is MyraFlynn.com. I have a show coming up in Los Angeles let's see. I have a show actually in Vermont, in my home state, because I'm doing kind of like a public baby shower situation.
Fun.
September 6th with a concert called Mother, where other mothers will be singing at the show, and then I will be performing. That'll be at Higher Ground Music Hall on September 6th, and then September 21st, I'm back here in LA performing at the Mint, where I will be sharing the bill with Eric Krasno from Lettuce. So that'll be a night of soul.
Is he a guitar player?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I've seen him.
Yeah. He I lived across the street from each other in New York, and
funny.
now it's all full circle. So yeah, I would look out for those things, and then after that, I'm not allowed to fly anymore.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time for sure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You got it, and let's talk soon.
Okay.
So there you have it. My conversation with Myra Flynn. I just feel like I'm learning so much from all my guests. And Myra was no exception. Just so interesting to hear about how she approaches her career, her craft, her life. I really appreciate her taking the time and for also performing her beautiful song, Roses. I also wish her and her husband much luck with the baby on the way. Very exciting. Anyway, for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening, and thanks as always. And let's talk soon. Peace.